Good morning, guys. I hope you're doing well. I'm doing pretty well. It's been 4 years since I filmed a video called Where to Live in the Algarve. It was back in November 2020 in the middle of COVID. And wow, lots of change. I've had losing my hair, got wrinkles, haven't got as many teeth as I used to have. So yeah, but I still have that pink shirt that I wore in that video. That's been 4 years on. It's going well. It's going strong. I should have worn it today. Anyway, but the thing is, what I wanted to say to you is, like, I've made a wealth of videos since those, since in the last 4 years, and a lot of them have been helping you to figure out where to live in the Algarve. Now, the thing is, like, where I want to live in the Algarve and where you want to live in the Algarve is a completely different ballgame. So it's important to nail down your requirements. Like, for example, schooling. If you've got kids, figure out whether your kids want to go to a private international school or a public government school, and then figure out where those are, because I've made some videos about those as well, and then you can figure out exactly where to locate your house based on that. But it's not just about schooling, it's about hospitals. If you need to be very, very close to a hospital to go there every day or something to get some specific drugs or whatever, or whether you like to live on the beach and just have a very crowded summer session, or you want to live in the hills like this, in the peace and quiet of the hills with birds tweeting around you all the time, or you want to live up in the mountains in Monchique, or if you want to live in a city, like in an apartment, for example. So it's also about what type of house you want to live in, whether you want to live in an apartment or a detached villa like this one with a pool and things like that, or whether you want to live in a little townhouse, or in suburbia, you know what I mean, with like lots of people close by. So take into these things into account before you work out exactly where you want to live. And then we'll find out which town is the best. So I'm going to go from west to east all the way through the Algarve and talk about every single town, and I'll list them below in the descriptions because I've made a video just about every single one of them. So I'll list them there, and I also might make a map where you can actually see where they are on the map and then just click the link to the video. So let's get into it. Okay, obviously you've got to start off with a coffee. If you guys know me and you've been watching my videos for a while, you know that I like a little bit of coffee now and then. So starting off from the west. Now, Sagres is the southwestern tip of Europe. And there's 2 points there. There's Cabo Santo, which is the actual southwestern tip of Europe. And there's Cabo Sagres, which is where there's a sort of a fort on there. And it is rumored to be Henry the Navigator's training school, but we're going to dig deep into that in a much more intense video about Lagos and Henry the Navigator in a few weeks' time. So Sagres is a great place to live if you like surfing, if you like a lot of wind, and if you like wild storms in winter, and if you like a generally cooler and windier approach to weather, because it's out there. It's like a promontory into the middle of the Atlantic. It's wild. A little bit of brush, not many trees. It's low scrub that around it, but it has its stark beauty of its own, and it is removed from the rest of the Algarve. Although Sagres, the town, is quite nice. There's bars and pubs and hotels and things which you can see in my video about Sagres. It has supermarkets and got a doctor or two, but generally you're gonna have to go to Lagos for a proper hospital. So it's like an outpost. And it's also got this like wild kind of culture around it. It's sort of pretty in the hills as we go further east. And that's a great segue to go a little bit further east because we're going to be going east all the way throughout this video to the next town of Salema. But if you go north, there's Vila de Bispo, and then there's Olhos, and then right on the border with Alentejo is Odiseish. Now inside there's a whole bunch of hills and everything. And that's where there's definitely this kind of wild culture where people sort of stop the world. I want to get off. I don't want to pay taxes. I don't want to abide by any rules. It's a bit lawless around there, and people hide in the hills and live off grid. Basically, a lot of eco-friendly houses and eco warriors around there. So it's an interesting environment. It's a really cool spot, and the people are great. I love them. I've got a good buddy from the West Coast. He was in the video with me in Sagres and Olhos, and yeah, it's a great spot. So, little quick note about the geography. If you don't understand the Algarve geography, we have a distrito, which is basically a province, the whole province, which is the Algarve. It's also known as Faro distrito, so the actual whole area, 150 kilometers wide by 50 kilometers high, is called Faro distrito. And then that's divided into 16 concelhos, or municipalities. And they're all chunked up. And within those concelhos, or the municipality, there are boroughs or parishes. And we call those freguesias in Portuguese. Okay. So now on the western Algarve, there's the Vila do Bispo Concelho, and there is that town, Vila do Bispo, and then we go further north to Olhos, which is more like probably the biggest town on the west coast. And it's nice. It's set back a little bit from the ocean, so you don't get there's quite a big ridge towards the ocean, so you don't get a lot of the weather directly. But it's a little bit sheltered. In the back, it's got a river running through it. It's really pretty. I like it a lot, actually. But houses tend to be slightly higher, which I was quite surprised at. The house prices tend to be slightly higher there. And I think it's just lack of supply, because a lot of the west coast is taken up with the Costa Vicentina Natural Park, but that inhibits building in that area. And there's a massive big development right just to the west of Olhos, right on the ocean cliff tops. And there's a lot of drama about the rights and the legalities. And I think the president of the Câmara at the time actually went to jail or was convicted or something. But this is supposed to be like a superficial look at the whole of the Algarve. So let's move on. Odisseixe is a lovely little town. It's in two parts. It's like Odisseixe Beach almost, and then Odisseixe Town, which is set back a little bit along the river. Gorgeous river winding through hilly lands. So let's come back down to the south coast now. Salema is also idyllic. It was sort of not made famous, but it was one of Rick Steves' favorite places in the whole of Portugal that he visited quite a few years ago. And it is still gorgeous. It's much busier now. There's lots of houses around, so you can actually, which is a nice thing in a way, because then you've got more options to buy. Before it was just a village and there were not many houses around. So heading a little bit further east towards Bergão, also very small, very popular, quite British, actually a lot of foreigners as well living in Bergão. But there's still obviously locals and Portuguese locals, generally older ones, because all the younger people go and seek their fortune in Lisbon or Porto or overseas as soon as they become of age. And then you go a little bit further east, there's Praia de Luz. And now Praia de Luz is basically almost like a satellite town of Lagos. It's within 5-10 minutes drive of Lagos. And it's got a really great vibe. It gets very busy in summer because the whole place is pockmarked with apartments and B&Bs and places to rent. And it's a great holiday summer destination. They've got some fantastic restaurants. We've been to Fortaleza restaurant quite a lot, which is right on a promontory overlooking the bay. There's a lovely marginal or promenade where you can walk down over next to the beach. And it's a lovely spot. And talking about walks, the hikes along the southern coast are spectacular. If you've been following me closely, I've actually walked from Vila Real Santo António in the east all the way to Sagres in the west, along the Ecovia, which is this pathway. And some of the most spectacular section of that is walking from Praia de Luz to Lagos. We did it the other way around. But anyway. So that's Praia de Luz. And then we get to Lagos, which is bigger. It's got all the amenities you want: hospitals, schools, international schools, Portuguese schools, all the grocery stores you'd need, big market as well. And it's just, there are sections of Lagos which are becoming really expensive. There's like 4 or 5 million euro houses there right on the promontory when you go down towards Pontevedra. And then also there's some quite expensive apartments right on the marina and things around, which is, so the generally, I'll go into all these sort of average costs of housing throughout the Algarve in a little appendix after this video, but it is more expensive in Lagos traditionally than the rest of the Algarve, slightly. Okay, so now we're moving a little bit further east, but first of all I'm going to take a break. One thing that is amazing, before we move on from Lagos, one thing that's wonderful that I love doing down there is just going to the many rooftop bars, having a drink, watching the sunset. To be honest, you can't actually see the sun setting from Lagos because it's around the bend, but you can get the glow, and it's It's a beautiful place. There's so many funky bars. There's got an amazing cafe scene, so like early morning coffee and or like mid-morning coffee, whatever, just morning coffee. They got like all the white, the flat whites and all those kind of funky coffees. So there's an advanced cafe scene in Lagos, which is great. And it's wonderful to see all these different, because one person brings in a bit of ingenuity and then everyone else copies it, and it just grows, and it's great. So from a culinary point of view, it's pretty cool. Some lots of lovely beachfront restaurants down on Meia Praia, and up on the cliffs of Ponte Vidade. There's a couple up there above Praia da Carmo. Praia do Camilo, that's what I mean. It's one of the most famous beaches on Instagram. Just everybody sees this shot. Right, so Lagos is great. Now moving east towards Portimão, there's a little it's kind of like, it's not a part of Portimão, but it's just west of Portimão. Alvor is a separate village, fishing village, right on the Alvor estuary, which is really cute and quaint. A lot of touristy restaurants and things like that in the strip. A lot of drinking and fun and stuff, but it's also quite a pretty little place, situated, as I said, right on the estuary, which is the Alvor River. Heading across to Praia da Rocha and Portimão. Now, originally Portimão was separate, and then Praia da Rocha was this coastal strip. It's kind of like a little mini Miami Beach, lots of high-rise hotels, casinos, sort of English breakfasts and happy hour beers and things like that. So it's pretty touristy, but it's not as super low class. And in summer, they do a lot of events on the beach, like they've got Afro Nation and musical events on the beach and lots of pop-up restaurants on the beach. So there's a lot of things happening in Portimão. It's quite fun in summer. But, if you want to live there, it's the second, or it's almost the biggest. It and Faro, more or less the same population. The urban area of Portimão is more or less the same as the urban area of around Faro and Montenegro. So that'll give you a balance. The two biggest cities in the Algarve. And then the only two places which I'd actually call cities. All the rest I'd call towns, even though in Portugal everything is called a city. So anyway, that's a whole nother topic that we don't need to go down that rabbit hole. Okay, so just across the river Arad from Portimão is Ferreiras, which is down on the river, which is fantastic. It's a beautiful little place, stunning little fish restaurants right on the quay, and I love that. It's got a lot of feeling to it. It's great. And then heading around the coast, but before we go in that 15-kilometer section of coast all the way to Armação and Pêra, let me just hop up to Silves quickly, which is up the river. And Silves was the ancient capital of the Algarve until 1577, when Lagos became the capital of the Algarve. And then in 1755, after the earthquake, Lagos was so destroyed that they moved the capital from Lagos to Faro, where it currently is today. Okay, so Silves is an historic old town where the Phoenicians used to sail up the river Arad, and it was great because it was hidden away, and it was well defensible because it has all these hills and things. And still to this day, it's quite impressive. You drive over down to Silves, and you've got the river on your left-hand side and this hill with a castle on top, and it's a well maintained, very, very clear borders of the castle. So Silves is a great spot, lovely live music and cafe anglais just on the border of it, lots of little restaurants around, and it's a cool place to live. It is a little bit cheaper being away from the ocean to buy houses, and it's not far to these beautiful, glorious beaches where we're going to go back down to now. And starting with Ferreiras, you go around down to the actual coastline out of the river mouth, and then you head east towards Cavoeiro, which is where I used to live, and that's a fun spot. It's become quite a little bit more modernized now. It used to be a very old fishing village, very authentic. It's now become a little bit more touristy. Tons of restaurants, lovely little beaches, amazing cliffs. The wooden walkway is a good spot to walk along the coastline and to experience it. And then they've got some crazy little bars and restaurants hidden in the cliffs, which are fun to seek out. So if you want to check those things out, go check out my Cavoeiro video, which as I said, I've listed a whole lot in the description. Getting further east, the famous Benagil Cave and Benagil Beach is there, where you can take tours of the caves. And it's not just that cave that's there. There's like 30 or 40 different caves all the way along the coastline. And you can take an old fishing boat, like one of those old little motorboats, and pump out a bit of diesel and go around and see those things. Anyway, that's a whole nother issue. Moving east from Benagil, there's a couple of little beaches and stuff like Albandeira or whatever, and eventually you get to Armação de Pêra, which is the most noticeable town in the region, the neighbouring region. And that was traditionally a Portuguese holiday spot. And there's quite a few expats coming into it now, becoming a little bit more internationalized, but it's still very much Portuguese. It's often dubbed the ugliest town in the Algarve, and it's okay. It's nice. I like it because it's so close to these incredible beaches. And that's my daughter, Isabella. Come along and say hello, Izzy.
Sorry.
She's just going off to school. Are you going to go to school?
I'm going to go to school. Bye, Dad.
Have a lovely day.
Have a good video.
Say hello to the guy.
Hi.
You've got to come over here.
Hi. Love you, Dad. Bye.
All right, bye. Have a wonderful day.
You too.
So, Armação de Pêra, like I was saying, is traditionally a Portuguese holiday spot, and it's highly seasonal, really seasonal. I mean, I'll chuck some stats down here, like what people think the population is in summer and the population in winter. Okay, I personally like, and then this is actually a good aside. The whole of the Algarve, all these coastal villages we're talking about, are seasonal. They're getting a little bit less seasonal these days, but generally during the winter, there's not much going on. It's quiet. There's no traffic. There's all the beaches to yourself, and some stunning days in winter as well. So all the flights are basically stopped. So that's why there are less people in the Algarve, and it's the most beautiful time. And people get a bit concerned about, oh my gosh, why is the whole Algarve closed down in winter? It doesn't close down. It just gets quiet and peaceful, and you can have it for yourself, which is great. In summer, obviously the crowds come and the fantastic weather begins, and then you've got to think about parking, all kinds of stuff. So just bear in mind that seasonality when you're living here. If you're living a little bit further away from the coast, like in Silves or Monchique, which I actually forgot to talk about, or Loulé, which we're going to get to, or Sagres del Portel, then it gets a little bit more measured. There's no difference between summer and winter. It's just all locals only, which is cool. Okay, moving east from Armação de Pêra to Albufeira, which is the heart of tourism. That's where tourism started in the Algarve. I'm not sure why, probably because the train line and the road came straight down from Lisbon to Albufeira, and that's where tourism started, and it became very, very busy there in the 70s. Cheap, they call them bucket tours or whatever, from the UK, and just filled with British tourists. And it's still filled with British tourists to this day. Actually, they made an interesting law recently that they were getting a bit upset with all these British tourists running around with no clothes on, men being topless in the streets, and women walking around with bikini tops in the streets. And sometimes I think there was an incident where people were totally naked running around. So the mayors cut down and said, hey, listen, guys, you got to behave. Because traditionally, Portuguese were fairly conservative and didn't enjoy that kind of behavior. So yeah, keep your shirt on, mate. Go to the beach and stuff. Get naked on the beach because there's nude beaches, and there's, and you can wear your bikini on the beach, obviously. But keep it on the beach. And when you go into town, get dressed, please. All right, so Albufeira is Albufeira. There's 2 strips in Albufeira with loud music and great bars and lots of alcohol and people getting drunk all the time, any time of the day. So there's a big party atmosphere. But there are other aspects of Albufeira. It's actually a very beautiful town. Right on top of the rocks. So when you go and look at it through those lenses, and just bear in mind that it does get busy and silly in summer. Okay. More so than the rest of the Algarve. Okay, let's move east a little bit more. So from Albufeira, we carry on. And then there's little bits of Albufeira, kind of like Olhos de Água, which feel like Albufeira, but they are actually separate little towns of them. And then we're moving along Falesia Beach towards Vilamoura. And this is the start of the more upmarket resorts. Now there's just a super yacht basin being built in Vilamoura, so a lot more wealth is pouring in on the western side of Vilamoura amongst the golf courses, because there's 6 golf courses in Vilamoura. There are some really expensive houses. We made a video about fairly recently about these places, and they had a 2.7 million euro apartment, which was a penthouse apartment, which was spectacular, but it's expensive. You know what I mean? There's no denying that. Okay. So Vilamoura life is generally centered around the marina there. Lots of restaurants and stuff. It's quite fun to go there and have a meal, have a few beers. It seems like there's millions of sort of Thai massage parlors all around there these days as well, which is quite interesting. Lots of hotels down there, so it's really great to go and have a base yourself in Vilamoura to actually see the rest of the Algarve when you're coming on a scouting trip, because there's tons of hotels down there, and off season they're relatively good deals. So from Loulé, from Vilamoura, which is in the Concelho of Loulé, the Council of Loulé, there's like a semicircle which goes up to Sagres, and I often talk about this. It's one of the most popular places for expats to move to. It's probably the center of the Algarve when it comes to the economy and to businesses and things. So from Vilamoura, we go a little bit northeast to Armação, okay, which is kind of like a working town which actually services the really wealthy areas of Val do Lobo and Quinta do Lago, okay, which are, just for reference, average price of a house in Quinta do Lago last year was about 4.5 million euros. Average price, okay, so expensive. Probably one of the most expensive places in the whole of Portugal. And then if you're heading a little bit further north from Armação, you get to Loulé, which is a delightful town. Love it. I lived there for quite a few years. It just gets better and better and better. And its main notable point is that on Saturday mornings, the market, this beautiful old market, as you can see, is very, very busy, and it spills out into the streets, and it's become quite a tourist attraction. So that's the major tourist attraction in Loulé. And besides that, it's a normal town. You know what I mean? Not much tourism, but lots of fun restaurants and things and bars, and still not many rooftop bars, which is weird. I'm sure that'll happen soon, but we found a couple of rooftop places to have drinks in at some of our events, because we do a monthly event. So if you don't know about our monthly events, subscribe to our newsletters on algarveaddicts.com. All right, so heading east from Loulé is Sagres del Portel. I live quite near there, and it's a lovely little nucleus for the surrounding valleys, and there's some gorgeous villas in the surrounding valleys with beautiful countryside views. If you were a committed real estate agent, you'd say we have a sea view, because we can see like a little bit of the ocean off if you look through the hills, but it's not, it's quite far away from the ocean, about 25 minutes from the ocean. And the nice thing in Sagres is that you can go 25 minutes down to Vilamoura, or 25 minutes to Faro Beach, or 25 minutes to Tavira, and take the ferry to the beach there. So, which brings us to Tavira. Now, actually, there are a couple of little villages before Tavira. Oh, hang on, I'm getting all mixed up here. Faro first, sorry, the capital of the Algarve, where the airport is. And there's Faro Beach, which is quite fun. I like to go and surf there during winter. It's great. Haven't been this year. I don't know what's been going on. But anyway, I've got to get back on the water, because I need it. It's good. Faro has got a burgeoning restaurant scene. And we were just down there the other day. They got some great spots in Faro. Going to the old town. And actually, for an in-depth look at Faro, look at my video, because we spent a lot of time down there speaking to a lot of people, and it's becoming quite interesting. So don't dismiss Faro completely. Further east, Olhão. Now, again, like everywhere in the Algarve, it's getting better all the time. I used to dismiss it as a scuzzy, dirty, crime-ridden fishing town, and it was. And it's now been cleaned up. There's no, when I say crime, I mean like sort of petty crime and people getting beaten up and mugged and stuff and things like that. So it doesn't happen anymore, which is great. And there's no drugs and things like that, which is great. So it's been cleaned up nicely. And a lot of Americans and internationals are moving into Faro, and French and Italians have been buying up Airbnbs for quite a few years now. So there's a very much an international vibe going on, but they work beautifully with the locals. And like I was chatting to a local of Olhão the other day, she was saying that the Olhanenses have their own character, but the Indians and the Chinese and the other internationals all bring their own bit of cosmopolitan culture to Olhão, and they add to the culture of Olhão. They don't delete the Portuguese culture, which is fantastic. It's lovely to see those little nucleuses happening. So Olhão is an interesting place. Check it out. And then going a little bit further east is Fuzeta, which I love because it's beautiful. It gets pretty busy there in summer because the beach doesn't have that much parking area, and it's pretty concentrated because there's only one beach that you can just drive to because it's in the Rio Formosa. The other beaches, you jump on the ferry and take the ferry, which is a very short ferry ride, and the ferries leave, I think it's almost every half hour during the summer. So it's very easy to get down to the beach via ferry. A little bit further north is a village called Monte Carapacho, and that sort of serves the surrounding areas. It's interesting as well to go and look out. Just note that if you're looking at houses in that area, you want a nice villa in the countryside, Monchique will be could be your closest village, where you can get all that you need from the supermarkets and the markets and things like that. Okay, so let's head a little bit further east. You get Santa Luzia, which I've made a video about, which is gorgeous, right on the Rio Formosa. Lovely little fishing village, very, very, lot of fishing culture there, and octopus, and the old-fashioned tuna industry, which is no more. So there's that, and then Tavira. Now, Tavira is one of the 4 places where expats are relocating to, and the reason people love Tavira so much is because it's on the river, and because it's maintained, it's old architecture, doesn't have any high rises or anything like that, and it's a very interesting, pretty town. So lovely restaurants as well. I mean, I need to get around to quite a few more restaurants there, but there's some great restaurants in Tavira, and it's got such an interesting coastline as well, because there's the Rio Formosa, easy access to the beaches by ferry. One in the center of town, one down in Águas, which is a little place. So heading east is Cabanas, just east of Tavira, which is kind of like almost like a satellite town, but it stands on its own. It's called Cabanas de Tavira and Conceição, which is the little village adjoining it, just to the north. And then there's a golf course up there called Benamor, which is great fun. Played a lot of golf there. Further east, you get Altura, and there's a brand new massive development called Verde Lago, which is, I think, trying to be the Quinta del Lago of the East, and I think it's succeeding. I haven't been down there yet. I've been dying to go down and have a look-see. Missed an event there recently, which I could have gone to, but anyway. Altura, and then you get to the 3 towns in the east. The biggest town is Vila Santo António, about 12,000 people, and it's quite unique because it's a grid-like structure of the streets when it was rebuilt after the earthquake in 1755. And then it's more of a Portuguese holiday town on the beach called Monte Gordo, high rises. And they've actually got a whole bunch of really cool beach bars down there with rooftop sections to them, which is great. It's fun. So it's quite a lively atmosphere down there in summer. So if you want to go check that out. And the nice thing about it is that it's warmer than the west, and the water is actually warmer than the west because it's very shallow. You don't have those cliffs plunging straight into the oceans in the west like you do in the west, but in the east you have a very shallow sandbanks going down into the water. You know, the bathymetry of the ocean is a little bit more gentle, so less waves and warmer water, which is great. And then there's Casamarim, which is a castle town, like a fortified hill town, basically, which has protected us from Spain for all these years and continues to glare at Spain and saying, don't come and invade us. And then you get to the border, the Guadiana River. Now, if you go a little bit north along that Guadiana River, you get to Alcutin, which is a gorgeous little village on the banks of the river, and with a neighboring village on the other side of the river. It's called San Luca de Guadiana in Spain. And apparently there's plans afoot to make a bridge. But every year, and it's actually this weekend, they have a festival called the Festival Contrabando. So there used to be a lot of smuggling there before the EU came around. And we used to smuggle stuff across from Portugal to Spain and vice versa. And they have a festival of smugglers. And what they do is they've got all these big plastic containers that they put together, and they actually make a temporary bridge all the way across the River Guadiana just for that festival, which is quite amazing. So yeah, I think the only towns I've missed out in this sort of whirlwind look at the Algarve is Monchique, okay, high up in the hills right in the northwest of the Algarve, and that's completely different to anything else. It's very small, a couple of crazy cool restaurants there with javali, wild boar, so it's very much a different culinary environment up in Monchique. And another one I've missed out is São Bartolomeu de Messinas, or what we normally just call Messinas. So that's almost as you enter the Algarve, crossing over from the Alentejo into the Algarve along the main highway to Lisbon, and that's where Messinas is. So you would have driven past that if you'd driven up to Lisbon and back, or taken the train, because the train stops through there as well. Okay, so I'm just going to discuss a couple of things now that I've gone through most of the towns. I'm going to the different concelhos and name them all for you. This is great for your Portuguese lessons. I'm going to do the population of towns, which is always a difficult thing because there's many different factors to take into account when you're counting people. I'm going to do a little bit of accommodation and house prices, the average prices of houses all the way across the Algarve, and also talk a little bit about public transport. Okay, back in a sec. All right, so there's 16 concelhos in the Algarve, and they form the whole district of Faro, which is also known as the Algarve, or just Algarve. Algesur, Vila do Bispo, Lagos, Monchique, Portimão, Silves, Lagoa, Albufeira. The largest one is Loulé, Faro, Olhão, Sagres del Portel, Tavira, also a really big one, Vila Santo António, Castro Marim, and Alcutim. Population statistics are always tricky because there are so many different sources and they vary, and generally these sources pick from the INE, which is the Institute of National Statistics from Portugal, and this, where I got these stats from, was a website called citypopulation.de, which pulls from the INE. But it's the way they've been arranged, because a lot of times you'll see, Loulé has 70,000 people in it, and that's the council, it's not the city. Okay, so what I've done is I've actually taken not the city, because some cities or towns are mixed together. Like, for example, Albufeira has got Ferreiras and Olhos de Água all combined into it. So I've actually taken the urban area. So these are the top 6 urban areas in the Algarve. If you want the top 10, you can just go back. And if you want the full list, you can go to algarveaddicts.com/population. There's a link in the description. So Portimão is the biggest, 49,000. Faro City is 46,000, including Montenegro. And then Albufeira, which includes Ferreiras and Olhos de Água, is 37,000. Olhão, which has now been down to 4th, is 31,000. Pêra and Vilamoura combined are 24,000. And Lagos is 23,000. I crunched a whole bunch of numbers and realized why I didn't do so well in stats at university. But basically, I've got these figures from 2 sources. One directly from ChatGPT, who's been pulling from Idealista. And I also went into Idealista myself and I looked at, for example, the average house price in the whole of the Algarve and then by each concelho. So basically you can go do that and then you scroll right down and gives you an average house price of euros per square meter. So I came up with 4,315 right now for an average price all the way across the Algarve, which works out to be a 100 square meter house, or just over 1,000 square foot house, is 431,000 euros, which sounds like a lot to me. So I don't know. I just give up. There's too much stuff going on. If you are a statistician or you can find a really great source online that you can trust, let's have it. Stick it in the comments. We'll discuss it. And I'd be excited to chat with you about it. All right. Otherwise, I hope you have a fantastic week. Please like and subscribe and share this video with your friends. It's actually quite complex and there's quite a lot in here. And next week, Nick Smith and I will be doing a Q&A so we can answer all your questions about the Algarve as far as we can. All right, stay well. AlgarveAddicts.com. We'll see you next week, but if you need any help relocating to the Algarve, click through to our website, AlgarveAddicts.com. We offer tours, immigration assistance, long-term rentals, and we can buy you a house.